Hello and welcome back to the Odds Now YouTube channel for the latest edition of the Premier League betting show. If you're watching for the first time, well, here's how it works. We spend the next 30 minutes running through all of the upcoming weekend's Premier League action, giving you our best bet for each individual game, which hopefully will help you go into the weekend armed to place some winning bets and accumulators. It's me, Matt Hill, taking you through the games alongside my regular co-host, Brad Walker. Brad, how's your week been?
All good, mate. Yeah, enjoyed the Champions League this week, and focus turns back to the Premier League now.
It does, and it's getting very interesting up at the top, isn't it? I'm sure we'll cover that plenty in the next half an hour. But if you are watching and you're not already subscribed to the Odds Now YouTube channel, please do hit that subscribe button. We have plenty going on over the next few weeks with the Darts World Championship. We've got a big boxing fight coming up, of course, and plenty of football to get you through the festive period. So we'd love to have you on board for the ride as we pump out the content. Just quickly, before we dive into this week's fixtures, a little look back to last week. Profitable weeks once again for both myself and Brad. I was needing my get out of jail card, to be fair, which I put all the eggs in the basket of if the week goes disastrously, you could bank on goals in Chelsea Tottenham over 5.5 goals, just shy of 6-1. Well, it landed, didn't it? 4-3. They never fail to deliver those kind of games. And Brad, meanwhile, a mark of consistency with 3 winners from your 5 selections. So overall, we staked 9 points. 1 point less because the Merseyside derby, of course, was postponed due to the weather. 9 points staked and 13.9 points returned. So nearly 50% profit overall on the week. Very happy with that. And it continues a good trend recently of profitable weeks. So long may it continue. We're going to start this week with Arsenal at home to Everton now. Of course, the Gunners dropped points. Frustrating 2 points dropped last week at Fulham. The gap has once again widened between them and their fellow title rivals. Can they get back to winning ways here against Everton, Brad?
I think they can, yeah. But like you said, that result against Fulham was a big blow. I think particularly with Liverpool not playing, they had a chance to really put the pressure on and close the gap to what would have been 4 points. I think now it's only 6, and Liverpool, of course, have that game in hand. But they have rebounded since with a win in the Champions League, 3-0 against Monaco last night on Wednesday. We're filming this on Thursday afternoon. Impressive performance again. No surprise to see Bukayo Saka at the heart of it, scoring 2 and assisting the other goal too. But they are looking quite thin at the back. Arsenal, Thomas Partey has been playing right back recently with Ben White injured. The likes of Ricardo Calafiori, Zinchenko are also out. They had the youngster, of course, Lewis Skelly, played at left back against Monaco. And I think it's fair to say in the Premier League this weekend, they cannot afford another slip-up if they are to maintain that pressure at the top heading into this really busy Christmas schedule. They face an Everton side who, of course, ended a dismal run of form last time out with a huge 3 points against Wolves, a rampant 4-0 home win for Sean Dyche's side. And they are, of course, now well rested as well after the postponement to the Merseyside derby last weekend. But heading into this one, their record away at Arsenal in this fixture isn't the most convincing. I think it's fair to say they've won just one of their last 28 away games against Arsenal. And their record on the road in general this season and this calendar year has been very poor. They've just had one away win in 2024. That was away at Ipswich in October. And they've not scored in any of their last 3 Premier League away matches. So it's not surprising to see Arsenal head in huge 1-4 favourites ahead of the weekend. I'm certainly not going to back Everton at 14-1. But I am going to give them a little credit. Like I said, they have failed to score in their last 3 away matches, but that doesn't mean they haven't had their fair share of chances during that period. In fact, they've averaged 3.26 expected goals across those 3 games, and they've had at least 2 shots on target in each of their last 6 matches on the road. And in fact, in 3 of their last 4 away matches, they had at least 4 shots on target. Of course, they've not taken much from those games in terms of points, but a lot of that has been to do with a lack of clinical edge in the final third rather than a lack of creativity. And so I do think getting over 2.5 Everton shots on target at 11-8 with Betway is a fair price. Like I said, that's came in for 3 of their last 4 away matches, albeit it's a step up in level facing Arsenal. But this wasn't really any value in backing anything for the home side. Like I said, they are big favourites to win here, despite the slip up last weekend against a decent Fulham side. So I thought I'd try and find a different angle in terms of a betting stance for this one. I do think, over 2.5 Everton shots on target at 11-8 is a fair price and could creep in, even though I do expect them to come up short on the winners line.
Okay, then Everton shots on target for Brad in that opening fixture. Well, I will take the next one, which is Wolves at home to Ipswich. And we thought that West Ham Wolves last week was going to be El Psycho, to quote Brad, but somehow Gary O'Neill remains in his job despite losing that game 2-1. And local journalists actually reporting that O'Neill will be given not only this Ipswich game, but other foreseeable fixtures. So the owner's not ditching Gary O'Neill just yet, if you believe those reports. But you do feel like a loss in this game at home to Ipswich. The way that Wolves fans have been in recent weeks, it feels like it's gone a bit toxic there. Very, very rarely you see things turn when it goes that toxic. So I don't want to completely write it off. I think, Gary O'Neill has done a lot of good in his time at Wolves overall, and they do have some fantastic talent in the squad. But it does feel like this has an inevitable end to it now, this chapter, I think, and it's just a matter of when, perhaps. And yeah, they take on an Ipswich side here who are not to be underestimated. They are on a 3-match losing streak in the Premier League, but I think that they are capable of causing Wolves some problems here. I worry about the Wolves' reaction more than the result, to be honest, against West Ham. Mario Lemina, the captain, squaring up to members of the Wolves coaching staff, some of his own teammates. I'm all for frustration, but I think as the captain, you have to carry yourself in a better way than that, and that probably just tells you on the inside that there's some problems there. We're told that the squad and the players are still firmly behind Gary O'Neill, but performance levels have just not been anywhere near consistent enough this season. And Ipswich, I think, are a mark of consistency. Even when they do come up short, they tend to put a good performance in, and they maybe just come out, lacking the class and quality to compete with the Premier League's best sides. But I do think that they're a dangerous team to underestimate. So they're a big price, Ipswich. I was tempted to hedge them double chance at evens, but instead, I think I've found a better angle in that I like with Liam Delap to score any time. Now, this is 7-2 at the time of speaking with BetMGM and Unibet, and I think that's a really attractive price when you consider that he'll be facing the worst defence in the league by far. And Liam Delap is really impressed in what is effectively his debut season in the Premier League. I know he made a couple of sub appearances for Man City, but he really has looked at home in the top division, leading the line. He's a tricky forward, comes deep, always likes to get on the ball, has a lot of touches for a forward as well. So he's always very involved in the game and involved in Ipswich build-up play. But he's scored 6 goals in 15 appearances so far in the Premier League. He hasn't scored in his last 4, but that hasn't been due to a lack of output. He's actually had 10 shots in his last 4 games, and he's had nearly 2 goals worth of XG in those 4 games. So if things had fell the way they perhaps should have, he would have carried on that rich scoring form. Prior to that, he had a great little scoring patch in late October, early November. And I think this is the perfect game for him to get his shooting boots back on and get back on the score sheet. 7-2 looks a huge price to me against a shoddy Wolves defence. So that's how I'm going to be playing that game down at the bottom of the table. Back over to Brad. Newcastle taking on Leicester. And we were just talking off camera, Brad, about the price of Leicester. Newcastle, not the fearsome team at home that they have been in seasons gone by. And you do find yourself trying to make a case for their opponents at the moment, especially when you see the prices on offer.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, we spoke off camera and couldn't believe how wide the price is for a Leicester win, which we'll go into in a moment. We start with Newcastle. I think the word to sum them up this season has been inconsistent, because they have impressed in certain performances, particularly against the bigger sides, beating Arsenal, of course, knocking Chelsea out the Carabao Cup, and that draw against Liverpool recently as well, 3-3 draw, in which they were very, very impressive. But I flagged this on last week's show ahead of their match away at Brentford. Don't read too much into that Liverpool game, because they are so inconsistent. But given Brentford's home record, I felt it was inevitable that Brentford would come out on top, and that as they did, of course, winning 4-2 against Eddie Howe's side. Newcastle now are without a win in the last 4 Premier League matches. That, like you said, they're normally a strong outfit at home. St James's Park is renowned as a ground in the Premier League, which is always going to be a tough match. But they've only won 1 of their last 5 at home now in the league, and that win, strangely, was against Arsenal, who are, of course, competing for the title. And a 1-0 win. That's only their second clean sheet at home this season. So it's a bit of a strange one. They're not quite performing in front of their home fans, particularly against sides that you'd expect them to beat. Remember, they got beat by West Ham in a game that many fancied them to win a couple of weeks ago. And they now face a buoyant Leicester side who have hit the ground running, I think it's fair to say, under Ruud van Nistelrooy. They've taken 4 points from his first 2 matches in charge. The latest being, of course, where they salvaged with 2 last gasp strikes, easy for you to say, in a 2-2 draw versus Brighton last weekend. That now leaves them with 14 points in total, 5 points above the relegation zone heading into this weekend. I'm sure they'd have taken that at the start of the season. And as I've touched upon, Newcastle's poor defensive record at home, only 2 clean sheets so far. They've also shipped 7 goals in the last 2 Premier League matches, Newcastle. And they face a Leicester side who have scored in all but one of their matches in the league so far, buoyed by the former club legend Jamie Vardy, of course, who has scored in his last 2 matches. And Newcastle's recent records against Leicester is also very poor. I was surprised to read this. They've only won one of the last 7 home matches against Leicester in the Premier League. And Leicester have also won 6 Premier League away matches versus Newcastle in the history of the division. That's more than any other opponent. Despite all of that, the home side do come in 1-3 favourites. I guess it's understandable when you compare the teams side by side. I think there is ultimately more quality in Newcastle, but Leicester come in at a very wide 9-1, which again, you said you couldn't believe. I can't believe it either. That is shortening, albeit, so it's best to get on that sooner rather than later to get the best price available. But 9-1 for Leicester, like I said, mentioning the form of the 2 sides in recent weeks, that's far too big to turn down, in my opinion. I don't think it'd be a huge shock if Leicester were to win here, given what we've seen from these 2 this season. So yeah, I'm absolutely going to snatch a hand off for that, for a Leicester win, like a 9-1 generally. So with multiple sports books, but as I said, it is shortening. So get on top of that sooner rather than later to get the best odds around. But yeah, like you said, Matt, I think you agree with me on that one. That price is looking far too big, isn't it?
Yeah, and as we say time and again on now across all sports and all channels, it's not about what you think is the likeliest outcome. Sometimes it's about whether the price correlates to the outcome. And I think Newcastle, the reputation befalls them maybe at home, where we consider them to be, one of the most reliable outfits going, but that just hasn't been the case in recent times. Home and away, they've looked vulnerable, they've looked inconsistent, they've looked worth taking on. And I think when you're talking about 9-1, I mean, that's more like a price you would associate with like a League One side going to a Premier League team in the Cup. I mean, that's getting like ridiculously big, isn't it? So I think, I totally see the reason you would chance that. So that's Brad's sizable best bet, biggest price we've had in a while, I think, up on this channel. And we'll see how that goes. Over to me then for Liverpool at home to Fulham. And I think Liverpool responded to their topsy-turvy draw with Newcastle in midweek in pretty mediocre fashion, limped past Girona in the Champions League 1-0. Arne Slot said he was far from happy with the performance. Mo Salah's penalty was the difference, a little bit of a questionable penalty, but all things considered, it's just about getting the results, isn't it? And that made Liverpool 6 out of 6 perfect in Europe this season. It's generally gone as well as it possibly could have, but Slot, I think you saw a little bit of his character there in that press conference, not happy with how that game went out, and he won't let standards slip. You would think he'll be giving his players a little bit of a rocket ahead of this weekend, especially given they're taking on a Fulham side who've proven their worth time and again this season. Another fantastic performance last week in drawing 1-1 with Arsenal, putting a dent in the Gunners' title hopes, as already discussed. And I think there's a lot to like about Marco Silva's side. They've got a lot of exciting attacking players, very physical at the back, don't mind competing. I would think they would thrive on a battle with somebody like Darwin Núñez, the 2 centre-halves, and that physical aspect of it. And they have players who can harm you on the break and in the final third. There's no doubt that Liverpool are a force to be reckoned with, particularly at home this season. And they have been for many seasons, to be fair. So you wouldn't be rushing to take them on. But Liverpool have built themselves on an imperious defence this season. But I think that they've been giving up a few more chances than usual in recent games, been getting away with it somewhat. Girona probably should have been on the score sheet in midweek. I think it's fair to say Newcastle scoring 3 times last time out in the Premier League. And I think both teams to score at 5-6 is very, very fair, because Fulham, although they drew a blank on their opening game against Manchester United, they've scored in all of the next 14 Premier League games. They always seem to find the back of the net. So I think BTTS, obviously the market is factoring in that Liverpool have an imperious defensive record, but this is a Fulham side that just know how to get on the score sheet. I think, as I said, they've got threats in lots of attacking areas. And I think when you combine it with Liverpool's recent sort of trend of giving up more chances than usual. I think the 5-6, it looks a little bit big for me. I thought it would be a little bit shorter. So I'm going to play it quite straight, 5-6 on both teams to score here is my best bet in Liverpool versus Fulham. Brad, the late kickoff on Saturday sees Nottingham Forest host Aston Villa. Intriguing game because Forest have been so good at home, but Villa are a dangerous, dangerous side, as we've seen.
Yeah, it's very intriguing. I think both of these sides are actually level on 25 points prior to kickoff. Forest just ahead of Villa on goal difference in fifth. Villa, of course, on their tails in sixth. But starting with Nottingham Forest, I think many felt that they were fading away a little bit after their positive start in recent weeks. But they've rebounded since from a poor run of 3 losses in 4 to then pick up a historic 3-2 win at Old Trafford last weekend. They've also won 3 of the last 4 at home at the City Ground, where they've also only conceded 6 goals so far, an average of less than 1 goal a game. So like you said, they're very good at home, but they face a Villa side who also look to be dusting themselves off after a difficult run. Unai Emery's men were without a win in 8 heading into December, but they've now won their last 3 in all competitions, including that 3-2 victory at RB Leipzig on Tuesday in the Champions League. John Duran, of course, scoring another stunner. He's now scored in consecutive matches for Villa heading into the match in the East Midlands this weekend. Because of all what I've just said there, like I said, they're very evenly matched on the table. I think it's a tough game to call. I don't think any result would be a huge shock. Forest, we've mentioned their decent record at home. Villa certainly got enough quality to go and win away, and the draw is also certainly likely. And to be fair, I think if I was forced to place a bet on the winners line, that's where I'd go. I'd probably go with a draw, given how evenly matched these two are. Having said that, it's quite a peculiar, when you look at the statistics, and the recent head-to-head records between these two sides, it's quite a peculiar landscape, really. Forest have only won 1 of their last 11 matches against Villa, but Villa haven't won any of their last 5 matches at the City Ground. So again, it just shows you just how tough to call this game is. Forest did win this fixture 2-0 last season, but again, as I said, I am hesitant to back either side on the winners line because I wouldn't be surprised with any outcome here, really. So instead, I'm going to put up a player prop. Villa striker Ollie Watkins has 7 Premier League goals to his name so far this season. The latest came in a 3-1 home win versus his former club Brentford at the start of this month. And while he's not scored since, he's still seen plenty of involvement. His last 4 Premier League appearances have seen him average 2 shots on target. And he also faces a Nottingham Forest defence with 1 clean sheet in their last 5. Yet he still comes in at over 2-1 to record 2 shots on target this weekend. Like I said, that came in for 3 of his last 4 Premier League outings. So I'm going to keep it relatively simple and back Ollie Watkins to have over 1.5 plus shots on target at 21-10. Comes in with Labrooks, I think, at the time of recording. I think there's more than enough value, to back that one there.
Very compelling case made by Brad for Ollie Watkins on the shots line. We go into Sunday, to busy old Sunday as well. We start with one of the more unusual rivalries in English football, I think. Crystal Palace. It's not exactly a local derby, a good 60 miles or so between these two sides, but stemming from, I believe, a series of clashes in the 1970s, and that rivalry has persisted. These two really do not like each other. So, rivalries are born in all shapes and form, and it's not just geography. And I think you have to factor that in when you consider these games where there is a bit of rivalry and a bit of needle. It does tend to impact things, doesn't it? As we see time and again with local derbies. I think this Brighton team are very, very good. But once again, they've shown their Achilles heel to be getting the job done in games where you would expect them to win. If you look at their last 3 games, they've taken just 2 points from games with Southampton, Fulham and Leicester. Now, for context, if they'd managed to get 3 wins there, which I don't think is an outrageous statement to make, they would be second in the Premier League, level on points with Chelsea. So they're not far away from the top teams. And of course, they've got results against many of the top teams this season. But it is that frustrating habit which they seem to have had even going back into the Graham Potter era and under Roberto De Zerbi, of throwing away silly points and failing to get the job done in games you expect them to. I don't expect standards to drop here given the added spice that they have when taking on Crystal Palace. I think this will be a good Brighton performance. However, I would say Palace are an improving side too. They made a very slow start. We all expected big things from him this year, given the way Oliver Glasner impressed at the back end of last season. It's taken a little while. I think losing Michael Elise had a much bigger impact than many factored in. He's obviously doing wonderful things now for Bayern Munich, and you can see why he's such a miss in that side. But they seem to be finding a way in this post-Elise era of operating. Some really positive signs, and that little unbeaten run that they're on continued with an impressive 2-2 draw against, albeit a faltering Manchester City at the moment, but they've still got to go toe-to-toe. City came back into that game, but Palace held really firm to get the result, and I thought they were good value for that point, to be honest. So they'll come here with their tails up as well. It's a big game for both of these sides. There'll be a willingness to not lose. And interestingly, when you look at the head-to-heads, 6 of the last 10 between these have finished level, and they've all finished 1-1. So anyone that likes a quirky stat, if you want to just back the 1-1, which has came in over 50% of the last 10 meetings, that's 7-1. But I'm not. I feel it feels a little bit sort of fanciful just to say it's got to be 1-1 because it's been 1-1 loads of times before. But I could certainly get on board with the prospect of this being a draw. I think both teams are in similar veins of form. I don't see an awful lot between these two squads in terms of quality. And then you add in the fact that it is a rivalry. There's a determination not to get beat. And I think the 3-1 about the draw becomes a really, really decent bet. So that's the way I'm going to play it. Some would call it sitting on the fence. I would call it a big price. So we shall see how that one pans out. But that's going to kick us off on Sunday, a busy Sunday, as I mentioned, because we have a 4:30 Manchester derby, which Brad is going to take us through. And I'm so used to going into this Manchester derby, Brad, thinking, Man United are up against it here, City absolutely flying. But it's almost the other way around, isn't it? I mean, United aren't flying, but City are in as bad a spot as we can remember in recent history, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I was hesitant to fully write them off a couple of weeks ago, and part of me still is, really, based off the last 7 or 8 years. But I think it's fair to say now.
I still am as well. But what is it? One win in 10 now in all competitions or something crazy?
Exactly, yeah. And I think it's fair to say now this is a full-blown crisis. I was hesitant to use that word too. I think sometimes with City, if they have a couple of games without a win, people can overreact. But this has been going on for a while now. Something isn't right. It's not just Rodri. I'm sick of hearing his name, to be honest with you, because if it was that, it just can't be that simple as it being Rodri. If you just look at the players, the body language, look at Pep, something's not right in that camp. And I think there are it's eerily similar to what happened to Liverpool a couple of years ago under Jurgen Klopp, where it just looked as though a big chunk of the squad just dropped off a cliff in terms of their form all at the same time. And you can see the impact that's had on their results. Of course, they lost 2-0 to Juventus in the Champions League on Wednesday. As I said, the squad looks as though it is declining. There's a lot of aging players in there, I think it's fair to say. There's lots of talk about potential business in January, but it's never easy to get deals done in that transfer window. So they might have to wait until the summer until they can have a proper clear out. And I just don't think anyone's scared of them right now. I think they've lost that fear factor, City. I think teams can smell blood and they're going after them. And this Manchester derby, like you said, over the years, it's been a kind one for them, particularly at the Etihad. But I just don't know if it could be coming at the wrong time for City. If they lose this one, you wonder about the impact that could have, not just on the points tally in terms of their league title ambitions, if they still have any, but also on the psychological damage that it could have on the squad, who look like their tails are down as it is, understandably so, given the recent run of results. Ruben Amorim, of course, it will be his first Manchester derby as Manchester United boss. He oversaw a 4-1 win for Sporting Lisbon against City in the Champions League recently, didn't he, as well? Can he replicate that at Man United? Well, Matt, do you know who the last Man United manager was to win his first Manchester derby before I go into it?
Oh, that's a good question. David Moyes, maybe, as a guess? No.
Sir Alex Ferguson was the last one.
There you go. So that long.
Yeah, so it's been a while, I think it's fair to say, since, like I said, a Manchester United manager won his first Manchester derby. So I think Amorim is in the last couple of weeks has realised the scale of the task at hand, losing consecutive Premier League matches to Arsenal and then Nottingham Forest last weekend. They weren't awful against Arsenal, to be fair. They were undone by some terrible defending from set pieces, even though Arsenal they've clearly proven their quality in those scenarios. But I'm sure that loss to Forest would have been tough to take for Amorim last weekend. He's not been helped by headlines off the pitch. Sporting director Dan Ashworth, of course, is departing after 5 months. With all the effort and time that they waited to get him in, he's now gone. I think it's pretty embarrassing, really, for the club and everyone that's concerned. I'm not sure it could have gone any worse for Ineos so far since they took control of the footballing department at the club. And I think we'll learn a lot about these Man United players this weekend too. Like I said, it could be the perfect time to play City. Will they seize this opportunity? I think I saw Gary Neville talking the other day that they're 16th in the Premier League in terms of distance covered, Man United, which is a worrying statistic. But if they can't get up for this one, then I'm not sure what they're even playing football for, given the form of City. Like I said, surely they can smell blood. They're not going to get a better chance to beat Man City at the Etihad, you wouldn't feel. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they react this weekend. I think it's fair to say if Man City do drop points, particularly if they lose, then the title race, then they're out of it. Even with everything that we've seen over the last 6-7 years, I'm still part of me which feels uncomfortable saying that as a Liverpool fan, but I can't see how they claw this back now if they were to drop more points this weekend, particularly if Arsenal and Liverpool win the day before. And while United's recent record at the Etihad, isn't convincing, they've lost their last 3 there in the Premier League. I think getting anyone at over 4-1 versus Manchester City right now is more than a worthy point. Similar to what we said with Leicester and Newcastle earlier in the show. United do have the quality to hurt this Man City side. If you look at Marcus Rashford, Garnacho, Bruno Fernandes, they've got goals in their sides when they can turn up, and on their day they can give anyone a game. It's just they haven't done that in recent times, but this is the best opportunity they're going to get to pick up a win versus what is usually a dominant Manchester City side. So I am going to back the away win this weekend. That comes in at 9-2 with Betfred as a best price, but that is shortening. So again, jump on that while you can. But yeah, Man United win 9-2 with Betfred. That is where I'm going to lay my hat this weekend. You watch City come back now and win 3 or 4-0, make me look like a mug. But
it could happen. But once again, price is king, isn't it? As we say so often. And look, it's just too big for where City are. It feels a bit too big for where City are. And they add in, as you say, Ruben Amorim's first derby. It'd be desperate to take advantage of this slump from their near neighbours, won't they? So I see the logic there. I actually put it up as Matt's best bet on the screen, which should give you a vote of confidence as well. Apparently, I'm backing it too. But that was just a typo. That is Brad's best bet for the Manchester derby, where we have 3 games left to cover this weekend. 2 7:00 kickoffs on a Sunday. Bizarre. I understand why Chelsea are kicking off at 7 because they're playing Astana right now as we speak. And that is a long old flight back from Kazakhstan. So, but yeah, not quite sure why Spurs have got a 7:00 slot, but there we are. Anyway, that's the game that I'm going to discuss first. Southampton hosting Tottenham. I'm almost tempted to say I give up, predict Tottenham because they're just the most chaotic Premier League team I can remember in a long time, either very good or very bad, not a lot in between. You would think on paper that this is a game they can win. And to be fair, without giving the game away, I am leaning that way, but it's not with that much confidence just because of, how can you be that confident in Spurs? But I more get there through my lack of confidence in Southampton, who results have been slightly better in recent weeks, but their points tally is still lowly. They're still bottom of the league. And I noticed Russell Martin's press conference today really concerns me when I see stuff like this. He appeared to criticise the Southampton fans for an ironic cheer when the goalkeeper went long. And he said something like, we were pressed hard, which forced our goalkeeper to kick long, and got an ironic cheer. 10 seconds later, we conceded, so it is what it is. Kind of blaming the fans for conceding that goal, which is just like, not sure. I think that's maybe a man under pressure and trying to justify his playing style. Which, look, we admire the playing style, but there does have to be some pragmatism, as we saw with Burnley last season and Vincent Kompany. Are these managers just playing in this way out of stubbornness to try and get themselves a job at a really big club? It certainly worked for Kompany. Whether it'll work for Russell Martin, time will tell. But yeah, Southampton, I think they're going to play some nice football. They're going to score a few goals at times this season, but they just frankly are too easy to breach to get anywhere near staying up in this league for me. And Spurs, as much as I don't like hanging my hat on them, I do think that they'll have the attacking quality to just cause Southampton too many problems. And like I say, the days of me being really confident back in Tottenham are long gone. But it's more based on the opponents. I have to go and get Spurs on side here. But the way I'm going to do it is backing them to win with over 2.5 goals in the match. Look at what I put up last week, for example, Spurs and goals. It just comes hand in hand, doesn't it? And that is the beauty of this chaos. You can almost guarantee goals. It's not always pretty from a Spurs perspective, but I always feel like their games are going to produce goals. And against this shoddy Southampton defence, I think Spurs to win with over 2.5 goals in the match looks like a rock solid way of playing this. That is currently a best price 11 to 10 with Ladbrokes. There is money all over the board for it. I think it's going to go off odds on. So get that price while you can. Tottenham to win and over 2.5 goals. My best bet there. Brad, the other bizarre Sunday 7 p.m. kickoff is Chelsea at home to Brentford. What do you make of this one?
Yeah, I think Chelsea have now fully announced themselves as title contenders this season. I know that's something you've been saying for a while, Matt, but I just don't think you can ignore them anymore after that 4-3 away win at Tottenham last time out. Of course, they were 2-0 down and still came back, although I think many felt they would, given, as you mentioned there, the unreliable nature of Tottenham this season and under Ange Postecoglou really in general. I do ultimately think Chelsea will come up short in this title race. Concerns over their goalkeeper, Robert Sanchez, remain. I'm not convinced by him at all, but they are only 4 points behind Liverpool at the time of recording. So again, I think you have to qualify them as title contenders now. They are unbeaten in their last 8 matches too. They've won their last 5 in all competitions on the spin. Their home form hasn't been amazing this year in the Premier League. I think it's the 10th best in the league. They've won 3, drawn 3, and lost 1 of their 7 matches at Stamford Bridge. I'm sure they would have been frustrated with home draws against the likes of Crystal Palace, for example. But still, Enzo Maresca's done an unbelievable job. I think amid all the noise that he walked into in the summer, on and off the pitch, with the amount of players and questions over the ownership, he's done incredibly well. To be honest with you, I think I spoke to you at the start of the season, Matt, and I put down 3 managers who I thought would be gone by January: Steve Cooper, Eric Ten Hag, both of whom have now gone, and the third was Enzo Maresca, which isn't proven to be quite as smart a pick.
I don't think you were alone in that, though, to be fair, mate. I think there was plenty saying that.
I think many, like you said, many were just expecting him to be adding onto that conveyor belt of Chelsea managers, but he's done fantastically well so far, and he faces quite a strange Brentford side. I think it's fair to say that there's been no side who have been better at home this season than Thomas Franks, but also no side's been worse away from home. So they've picked up just 1 point on the road so far this season. Conceding goals has been a problem, to be fair, regardless of the venue. But on the road, goals have dried up at the top end of the pitch for them. They're averaging less than a goal scored per game in away fixtures so far. There is an opportunity to improve this weekend, potentially. Chelsea have only got 1 home clean sheet to their name this season. But I do think it's impossible to back anything other than a home win, given Chelsea's quality. And again, as I say, Brentford's awful away record. But despite Brentford's poor scoring run on the road, I do think they have goals in their team with the likes of Brian Mbeumo, Johan Visser, and others. They've scored in all of their 3 Premier League matches at Stamford Bridge, to be fair, Brentford, since they were promoted. In fact, they won all 3 of those games against Chelsea. I couldn't believe that when I was doing the research for this show. They're yet to lose at Stamford Bridge in the Premier League. But this Chelsea side is better than those that they faced in the past, I think it's fair to say. So while I do think Brentford will land the glove, I do think Chelsea will come out on top. So I'm going to go over Chelsea winning both teams to score. That comes in odds against at 11-8 with multiple sports books. And I think, again, that's a fair price given everything that I've just ran through.
Yeah, I would agree. I couldn't put anybody off that one. Final game of the weekend, well, it actually rolls into Monday. Monday Night Football is Bournemouth at home to West Ham. And I love Bournemouth. I really do think I've been a fan of them for a couple of seasons now, particularly under Andoni Iraola, who I think is one of the best tacticians in the league. They're having a fantastic season. A little bit of the Brightons about them in the what could have been. They've dropped a few silly points at times, but you're never going to be perfect every week. And generally, you can hang your hat on Bournemouth being pretty good here. So I'm going to kind of contradict myself here and try and make a case for West Ham. But again, it's at the prices. And I have not been impressed with West Ham on the whole. They've shipped goals. They've not looked like they've got much of a plan under Julian Lopetegui. But then out of nowhere, they go and get that 2-0 win at Newcastle. I thought Newcastle were the banker of the week. And that, similar comments apply to what we said earlier about Newcastle. Just shows a bit like Spurs. You don't really know what to make of them this season. But fair play to West Ham. I thought they actually upped performance levels there. It was a much needed improvement. They got that big win over Wolves as well. And while it's still not perfect, far from it, At least we're seeing some signs of life from this West Ham side. And I look at the prices here, and it's hard to argue with the way it's been priced up. Bournemouth obviously have the home advantage. They're an informed team. They look like they have a better structure and plan than West Ham this season. But ultimately, I just find myself look at the two squads and thinking West Ham have enough quality to beat Bournemouth. If they go with the right mindset and their best players turn up, which are big ifs. But I think at 7-2 for the West Ham win, there's enough factored into that price to make me want to chance the Hammers here. So it's nothing against Bournemouth, who are possibly my favourite Premier League team to watch. And it's certainly not an endorsement of Julian Lopetegui, who, again, I do think it's a matter of if not when he is sacked. Already seems to be daily talk about who the next West Ham manager is going to be. They haven't even sacked the current one yet. It's a little bit disrespectful, but that is kind of how the world works, I suppose. I'm not saying it's going to be a grand turnaround or anything, but Bournemouth are sometimes prone to a silly slip up. That's why they're not European contenders, probably. And West Ham, they've certainly got the tools if Bournemouth do slip up. Price play, it's West Ham for me. That is the 10 games boxed off. So what I'm going to do here, just to round the show off, is get our best bets up onto the screen. Starting with yours, Brad. You've gone for over 2.5 shots from Everton. Shot on target against Arsenal at a juicy 11-8. Leicester, a huge 9-1 to beat the inconsistent Newcastle. Ollie Watkins over 1.5 shots on target for Villa at Forest. You've gone begrudgingly, I imagine, for a Man United win in the Manchester derby against Man City, and Chelsea to win with both teams scoring against Brentford. As always, Brad, if I put you on the spot, what is your best bet from those?
That Leicester one, again, I think we both agree that's far too wide in my eyes heading into this weekend. So that's definitely, if I had to pick one, I'd go for that one.
Yeah, Leicester 9-1 to beat Newcastle. It does seem a monstrous price, doesn't it? Well, my best selections here are Liam Delap, anytime goal scorer against Ipswich, for Ipswich against Wolves, a very, very leaky Wolves defence. Both teams to score in Liverpool versus Fulham. Fulham have scored in every game since the opening day of the season. Brighton, Crystal Palace to cancel each other out in their clash of supposed rivals. Tottenham to get the better of a very leaky Southampton side with over 2.5 goals in the matches, 11-10. And West Ham 7-2 to beat Bournemouth again, just taking a bit of a chance there at the prices. I would say that my favourite bet of the lot is Liam Delap, anytime goal scorer. I think he's been really impressive in the Premier League this season. And against that Wolves defence, he must fancy his chances at 7-2. Well, let us know what you're backing this weekend in the Premier League. Love to hear your selections and thoughts in the comments. And if you haven't already, please hit subscribe to keep in tune with all of the Odds Now content over a very busy festive period. We'll see you again very soon. Thanks for watching.